Welcome to Page Whispers. Today, we journey through the powerful and unforgettable words of Randy Pausch in the last lecture, a talk that became a legacy, a farewell that turned into a celebration of life. This is not just a lecture. It is a love letter to his children, a message to dreamers, and a guide to those navigating the shortness and beauty of life. Let the wisdom within these pages reach your heart, and may you listen not with your ears, but with your soul. I have an engineering problem. Physically, I'm in pretty terrific shape, but I have 10 tumors in my liver. And the truth is, I only have a few months left to live. I'm a father to 3 young children. I'm married to the woman of my dreams. And while I could feel sorry for myself, I know that wouldn't help me or them. How do I spend my very limited time? The obvious answer is be with my family, hold them close, take care of them, embrace every single moment while I still can. And behind the scenes, do the quiet logistical work to make their lives easier, even after I'm gone. But there's something else, something less obvious. How do I teach my children what I would have taught them over the next 20 years? They're too young now to understand those talks, but I still want to tell them what matters. Right from wrong, how to face life's challenges, what I believe is truly important. And I want them to hear my stories, not just because they're mine, but because in them are the lessons I hope will guide their lives. That's what led me to give my last lecture at Carnegie Mellon University. These lectures are usually videotaped, and I knew exactly what I was doing. Under the guise of an academic talk, I was bottling myself up in hopes that one day that bottle would wash up on a shore my children would be standing on. If I had been a painter, I would have left them paintings. If I were a musician, I'd have composed songs. But I am a lecturer, so I lectured. I lectured about the joy of life, about how much I appreciated life, even with so little of my own left. I talked about honesty, integrity, gratitude, and other things I hold dear. And I tried very hard not to be boring. This book is a way for me to continue what I began on stage. Because time is precious, and I want to spend all that I can with my kids, I asked Jeffrey Zaslow for help. Each day, I ride my bike around my neighborhood, getting exercise crucial for my health. On 53 long bike rides, I spoke to Jeff on my cell phone headset. He then spent countless hours helping to turn my stories, I suppose we could call them 53 lectures, into the book that follows. We knew right from the start, none of this is a replacement for a living parent. But engineering isn't about perfect solutions. It's about doing the best you can with limited resources. Both the lecture and this book are my attempts to do exactly that. Part 1. The last lecture. Chapter 1. An injured lion still wants to roar. A lot of professors give talks titled The Last Lecture. Maybe you've seen one. It has become a common exercise on college campuses. Professors are asked to consider their demise and to ruminate on what matters most to them. And while they speak, audiences can't help but mull the same question. What wisdom would we impart to the world if we knew it was our last chance? If we had to vanish tomorrow, what would we want as our legacy? For years, Carnegie Mellon had a last lecture series, but by the time organizers got around to asking me to do it, they'd renamed their series Journeys, asking selected professors to offer reflections on their personal and professional journeys. It wasn't the most exciting description, but I agreed to go with it. I was given the September slot. At the time, I already had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, but I was optimistic. Maybe I'd be among the lucky ones who'd survive. While I went through treatment, those running the lecture series kept sending me emails. What will you be talking about? They asked. Please provide an abstract. There's a formality in academia that can't be ignored, even if a man is busy with other things like trying not to die. By mid-August, I was told that a poster for the lecture had to be printed, so I'd have to decide on a topic. That very week, however, I got the news My most recent treatment hadn't worked. I had just months to live. I knew I could cancel the lecture. Everyone would understand. Suddenly, there were so many other things to be done. I had to deal with my own grief and the sadness of those who loved me. I had to throw myself into getting my family's affairs in order. And yet, despite everything, I couldn't shake the idea of giving the talk. I was energized by the idea of delivering a last lecture that really was a last lecture. What could I say? How would it be received? Could I even get through it? Then let me back out. I told my wife, Jai, but I really want to do it. Jai had always been my cheerleader. When I was enthusiastic, so was she. But she was leery of this whole last lecture idea. We had just moved from Pittsburgh to southeastern Virginia so that after my death, Jai and the kids could be near her family. Jai felt that I ought to be spending my precious time with our kids or unpacking our new house, rather than devoting my hours to writing the lecture and then traveling back to Pittsburgh to deliver it. Call me selfish, Jai told me, but I want all of you. Any time you'll spend working on this lecture is lost time, because it's time away from the kids, and from I understood where she was coming from. From the time I gotten sick, I had made a pledge to myself to defer to Jai and honor her wishes. I saw it as my mission to do all I could to lessen the burdens in her life brought on by my illness. That's why I spent many of my waking hours making arrangements for my family's future without me. Still, I couldn't let go of my urge to give this last lecture. Throughout my academic career, I'd given some pretty good talks, but being considered the best speaker in a computer science department is like being known as the tallest of the seven dwarfs. And right then, I had the feeling that I had more in me, that if I gave it my all, I might be able to offer people something special. Wisdom is a strong word, but maybe that was it. Jai still wasn't happy about it. We eventually took the issue to Michelle Rice, the psychotherapist we'd begun seeing a few months earlier. She specializes in helping families when one member is confronting a terminal illness. I know Randy, Jai told her, Rice. He's a workaholic. I know just what he'll be like when he starts putting the lecture together. It'll be all-consuming. The lecture, she argued, would be an unnecessary diversion from the overwhelming issues we were grappling with in our lives. Another matter upsetting Jai. To give the talk as scheduled, I would have to fly to Pittsburgh the day before, which was Jai's 41st birthday. This is my last birthday we'll celebrate together, she told me. You're actually going to leave me on my birthday? Certainly. The thought of leaving Jai that day was painful to me, and yet I couldn't let go of the idea of the lecture. I had come to see it as the last moment of my career, as a way to say goodbye to my work family. I also found myself fantasizing about giving a last lecture that would be the oratorical equivalent of a retiring baseball slugger driving one last ball into the upper deck. I had always liked the final scene in The Natural when the aging, bleeding ball player Roy Hobbs miraculously hits that towering home run. Rice listened to Jai and to me. In Jai, she said she saw a strong, loving woman who had intended to spend decades building a full life with a husband, raising children to adulthood. Now our lives together had to be squeezed into a few months. In me, Dr. I saw a man not yet ready to fully retreat to his home life, and certainly not yet ready to climb into his deathbed. This lecture will be the last time many people I care about will see me in the flesh, I told her flatly. I have a chance here to really think about what matters most to me, to cement how people will remember me, and to do whatever good I can on the way out more than once, Dr. Rice had watched Jai and me sit together on her office couch, holding tightly to each other, both of us in tears. She told us she could see the great respect between us, and she was often viscerally moved by our commitment to getting our final time together right. But she said it wasn't her role to weigh in on whether or not I gave the lecture. "You'll have to decide that on your own," she said, and encouraged us to really listen to each other so we could make the right decision for both of us. Given Jai's reticence, I knew I had to look honestly at my motivations. Why was this talk so important to me? Was it a way to remind me and everyone else that I was still very much alive? To prove I still had the fortitude to perform? Was it a limelight lover's urge to show off one last time? The answer was yes on all fronts. An injured lion wants to know if he can still roar. I told Jai, it's about dignity and self-esteem, which isn't quite the same as vanity. There was something else at work here, too. I had started to view the talk as a vehicle for me to ride into the future I would never see. I reminded Jai of the kids' ages, 5, 2, and 1. Look, I said, at 5, I suppose that Dylan will grow up to have a few memories of me. But how much will he really remember? What do you and I even remember from when we were 5? Will Dylan remember how I played with him? Or what he and I laughed about? It may be hazy at best. And how about Logan and Chloe? They may have no memories at all. Nothing. Especially Chloe. And I can tell you this. When the kids are older, they're going to go through this phase where they absolutely, achingly need to know. Who was my dad? What was he like? This lecture could help give them an answer to that. I told Jai I'd make sure Carnegie Mellon would record the lecture. I'll get you a DVD. When the kids are older, you can show it to them. It'll help them understand who I was and what I cared about. Jai heard me out, then asked the obvious question. If you have things you want to say to the kids or advice you want to give them, why not just put a video camera on a tripod and tape it here in the living room? Maybe she had me there, or maybe not. Like that lion in the jungle, my natural habitat was still on a college campus in front of students. One thing I've learned, I told Jai, is that when parents tell children things, it doesn't hurt to get some external validation. If I can get an audience to laugh and clap at the right time, maybe that would add gravitas to what I'm telling the kids. Jai smiled at me, her dying showman, and finally relented. She knew I'd been yearning to find ways to leave a legacy for the kids. Perhaps this lecture could be an avenue for that. And so, with Jai's green light, I had a challenge before me. How could I turn this academic talk into something that would resonate with our kids a decade or more up the road? I knew for sure that I didn't want the lecture to focus on my cancer. My medical saga was what it was, and I'd already been over it and over it. I had little interest in giving a discourse on, say, my insights into how I coped with the disease or how it gave me new perspectives. Many people might expect the talk to be about dying, but it had to be about living. What makes me unique? That was the question I felt compelled to address. Maybe answering that would help me figure out what to say. I was sitting with Jai in a doctor's waiting room at Johns Hopkins, awaiting yet another pathology report, and I was bouncing my thoughts off her. Cancer doesn't make me unique, I said. There is no arguing that. More than 37,000 Americans a year are diagnosed with pancreatic cancer alone. I thought hard about how I define myself. As a teacher, a computer scientist, a husband, a father, a son, a friend, a brother, a mentor to my students. Those are all roles I valued. But did any of those roles really set me apart? Though I've always had a healthy sense of self, I knew this lecture needed more than just bravado. I asked myself, what do I alone truly have to offer? And then, there in that waiting room, I suddenly knew exactly what it was. It came to me in a flash. Whatever my accomplishments, all of the things I loved were rooted in the dreams and goals I had as a child, and in the ways I had managed to fulfill almost all of them. My uniqueness, I realized, came in the specifics of all the dreams, from incredibly meaningful to decidedly quirky, that define my 46 years of life. Sitting there, I knew that despite the cancer, I truly believed I was a lucky man because I had lived out these dreams. And I had lived out my dreams in great measure because of things I was taught by all sorts of extraordinary people along the way. If I was able to tell my story with the passion I felt, my lecture might help others find a path to fulfilling their own dreams. I had my laptop with me in that waiting room, and fueled by this epiphany, I quickly tapped out an email to the lecture organizers. I told them I finally had a title for them. My apologies for the delay, I wrote. Let's call it, Really Achieving Your Childhood Dreams. Chapter 2, My Life in a Laptop. How exactly do you catalog your childhood dreams? How do you get other people to reconnect with theirs? As a scientist, these weren't the questions I typically struggled with. For 4 days, I sat at my computer in our new home in Virginia, scanning slides and photos as I built a PowerPoint presentation. I've always been a visual thinker, so I knew the talk would have no text, no word script. But I amassed 300 images of my family, students, and colleagues, along with dozens of offbeat illustrations that could make a point about childhood dreams. I put a few words on certain slides, bits of advice, sayings. Once I was on stage, those were supposed to remind me what to say. As I worked on the talk, I'd rise from my chair every 90 minutes or so to interact with the kids. Jai saw me trying to remain engaged in family life, but she still thought I was spending way too much time on the talk, especially since we just arrived in a new house. She, naturally, wanted me to deal with the boxes piled all over our house. At first, Jai didn't plan to attend the lecture. She felt she needed to stay in Virginia with the kids to deal with the dozens of things that had to get done in the wake of our move. I kept saying, I want you there. The truth was I desperately needed her there. And so she eventually agreed to fly to Pittsburgh on the morning of the talk. I had to get to Pittsburgh a day early, however, so at 1:30 p.m. on September 17th, the day Jai turned 41, I kissed her and the kids goodbye and drove to the airport. We had celebrated her birthday the day before with a small party at her brother's house. Still, my departure was an unpleasant reminder for Jai that she'd now be without me for this birthday and all the birthdays to come. I landed in Pittsburgh and was met at the airport by my friend Steve Siebold, who'd flown in from San Francisco. We had bonded years earlier. Well, I did a sabbatical Electronic Arts, the video game maker where Steve is an executive. We'd become as close as brothers. Steve and I embraced, hired a rental car, and drove off together, trading gallows humor. Steve said he'd just been to the dentist, and I bragged that I didn't need to go to the dentist anymore. We pulled into a local diner to eat, and I put my laptop on the table. I flashed quickly through my slides, now trimmed to 280. It's still way too long, Steve told me. Everyone will be dead by the time you're through with the presentation. The waitress, a pregnant woman in her 30s with dishwater blonde hair, came to our table just as a photo of my children was on the screen. Cute kids, she said, and asked for their names. I told her, that's Dylan, Logan, Chloe. The waitress said her daughter's name was Chloe, and we both smiled at the coincidence. Steve and I kept going through the PowerPoint, with Steve helping me focus. When the waitress brought our meals, I congratulated her on her pregnancy. You must be overjoyed, I said. Not exactly, she responded. It was an accident. As she walked away, I couldn't help but be struck by her frankness. Her casual remark was a reminder about the accidental elements that play into both our arrival into life and our departure into death. Here was a woman having a child by accident that she surely would come to love. As for me, through the accident of cancer, I'd be leaving 3 children to grow up without my love. An hour later, alone in my room at the hotel, my kids remained in my head as I continued to cut and rearrange images from the talk. The wireless internet access in the room was spotty, which was exasperating because I was still combing the web, looking for images. Making matters worse, I was starting to feel the effects of the chemo treatment I'd received days before. I had cramps, nausea, and diarrhea. I worked until midnight, fell asleep, and then woke up at 5 a.m. in a panic. A part of me doubted that my talk would work at all. I thought to myself, this is exactly what you get when you try to tell your whole life story in an hour. I kept tinkering, rethinking, reorganizing. By 11 a.m., I felt I had a better narrative arc. Maybe it would work. I showered, got dressed. At noon, Jai arrived from the airport and joined me and Steve for lunch. It was a solemn conversation, with Steve vowing to help look after Jai and the kids. At 1:30 p.m., the computer lab on campus where I spent much off-me life was dedicated in my honor. I watched the unveiling of my name over the door. At 2:15 p.m., I was in my office, feeling awful again, completely exhausted, sick from the chemo, and wondering if I'd have to go on stage wearing the adult diaper I'd brought as a precaution. Steve told me I should lie down on my office couch for a while, and I did, but I kept my laptop on my belly so I could continue to fiddle. I cut another 60 slides. At 3:30 p.m., a few people had already begun lining up for my talk. At 4 p.m., I roused myself off the couch and started gathering my props for the walk across campus to the lecture hall. In less than an hour, I'd have to be on the stage. Chapter 3. The Elephant in the Room. Jai was already in the hall, an unexpected full house of 400, and as I hopped on stage to check out the podium and get organized, she could see how nervous I was. While I busied myself arranging my props, Jai noticed that I was making eye contact with almost no one. She thought that I couldn't bring myself to look into the crowd, knowing I might see a friend or former student, and I'd be too overwhelmed by the emotion of that eye contact. There was a rustling in the audience as I got myself ready. For those who came to see just what a man dying of pancreatic cancer looked like, surely there were questions. Was that my real hair? Yes, I kept all my hair through chemotherapy. Would they be able to sense how close to death I was as I spoke? My answer, just watch. Even with the talk only minutes away, I continued puttering at the podium, deleting some slides, rearranging others. I was still working at it when I was given the signal. We're ready to go, someone told me. I wasn't in a suit. I wore no tie. I wasn't going to get up there in some professorial tweed jacket with leather elbow patches. Instead, I had chosen to give my lecture wearing the most appropriate childhood dream garb I could find in my closet. Granted, at first glance, I looked like the guy who'd take your order at a fast food drive-thru. But actually, the logo on my short-sleeve polo shirt was an emblem of honor because it's the one worn by Walt Disney Imagineers, the artists, writers, and engineers who create theme park fantasies. In 1995, I spent a 6-month sabbatical as an Imaginer. It was a highlight of my life, the fulfillment of a childhood dream. That's why I was also wearing the oval Randy name badge given to me when I worked at Disney. I was paying tribute to that life experience and to Walt Disney himself, who famously had said, "If you can dream it, you can do it." I thanked the audience for coming, cracked a few jokes, and then I said, in case there's anybody who wandered in and doesn't know the backstory, my dad always taught me that when there's an elephant in the room, introduce it. If you look at my CT scans, there are approximately 10 tumors in my liver, and the doctors told me I have 3 to 6 months of good health left. That was a month ago, so you can do the math. I flashed a giant image of the CT scans of my liver onto the screen. The slide was headlined, "The Elephant in the Room," and I had helpfully inserted red arrows pointing to each of the individual tumors. I let the slide linger so the audience could follow the arrows and count my tumors. "All right," I said, "that is what it is. We can't change it. We just have to decide how we'll respond. We cannot change the card we are dealt, just how we play the hand." In that moment, I was definitely feeling healthy and whole. The Randy of old, powered no doubt by adrenaline and the thrill of a full house. I knew I looked pretty healthy, too, and that some people might have trouble reconciling that with the fact that I was near death. So I addressed it. "If I don't seem as depressed or morose as I should be, sorry to disappoint you," I said. And after people laughed, I added, "I assure you I am not in denial. It's not like I'm not aware of what's going on in my family, my 3 kids, my wife. We just decamped. We bought a lovely house in Virginia, and we're doing that because that's a better place for the family to be down the road." I showed a slide of the new suburban home we just purchased. Above the photo of the house was the heading, "I am not in denial." My point, Jai and I had decided to uproot our family, and I had asked her to leave a home she loved and friends who cared about her. We had taken the kids away from their Pittsburgh playmates. We had packed up our lives, throwing ourselves into a tornado of our own making when we could have just cocooned in Pittsburgh, waiting for me to die. And we had made this move because we knew that once I was gone, Jai and the kids would need to live in a place where her extended family could help them and love them. I also wanted the audience to know that I looked good and felt Oklahoma, in part because my body had started to recover from the debilitating chemotherapy and radiation my doctors had been giving me. I was now on the easier to endure palliative chemo. "I'm in phenomenally good health right now," I said. "I mean, the greatest thing of cognitive dissonance you will ever see is that I am in really good shape. In fact, I am in better shape than most of you." I moved sideways towards center stage. Hours earlier, I wasn't sure I'd have the strength to do what I was about to do, but now I felt emboldened and potent. I dropped to the floor and began doing push-ups. In the audience's laughter and surprised applause, it was almost as if I could hear everyone collectively exhaling their anxiety. It wasn't just some dying man. It was just me. I could begin. Thank you for joining me today on Page Whispers. Randy's story reminds us, no matter how much time we have, we can choose to live it with purpose, humor, and heart. If this touched you even a little, share it forward. Because sometimes one voice becomes someone's turning point. See you in the next chapters.